Imagine you're crouched in a muddy foxhole on some godforsaken Pacific island. The year is 1942. Somewhere out there, hidden in the dense jungle canopy, a Japanese sniper has you pinned down. You've already lost 2 buddies this morning. The moment you stick your head up, snap, it's over. But what if I told you that one of the most ingeniously simple tricks of World War II would turn the tables on these deadly marksmen? A tactic so brilliantly stupid, so absurdly effective, that it would save thousands of American lives while driving enemy snipers absolutely insane? This is the story of the helmet decoy, a trick that didn't originate with farmers, but was perfected by desperate soldiers who turned a basic piece of equipment into a lethal psychological weapon. It's a tale of innovation under fire, of young Marines outsmarting a patient and deadly enemy, and how sometimes the simplest ideas are the ones that change everything. I'm going to take you from the muddy trenches of World War I, where this tactic was born, all the way to the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, Saipan, and beyond, where American Marines refined it into an art form against one of the most feared enemies they would ever face. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let me tell you about the time a helmet on a stick became one of the deadliest weapons in the Pacific War. August 7, 1942. The 1st Marine Division hits the beaches of Guadalcanal in what would become the first major Allied offensive against Japan. These Marines, many of them teenagers who never left their hometowns before enlisting, were about to discover a new kind of hell. Now, before we get to our helmet trick, you need to understand the nightmare these guys were walking into. Because the Japanese snipers they faced weren't just good, they were terrifyingly patient, expertly camouflaged, and absolutely committed to killing as many Americans as possible before they themselves died. Let me paint you a picture of what made Japanese snipers so deadly. First, the camouflage. These guys were masters of blending in. They'd use camouflage nets made from local vegetation, but more often they'd craft their own ghillie suits from whatever the jungle provided. Coconut palm fibers, reeds, rushes, materials that Japanese fishermen and farmers had used for centuries to make raincoats. In the jungle, a properly camouflaged Japanese sniper was essentially invisible. But it wasn't just the camouflage. It was their tactics. Japanese snipers would climb into trees, sometimes 30, 40 feet up, and tie themselves in. They'd rig small chairs or platforms among the branches and fronds. Once up there, they might stay for days. Days. Waiting. Watching. Learning your patterns. One Marine battalion historian wrote about encounters with these snipers. From a tree almost anywhere around our oval perimeter, a Japanese sharpshooter could choose a Yank target who had to leave his water-soaked hole. Think about that. Every time you needed to take a bathroom break, get water, or move to a new position, you were potentially in someone's crosshairs. Now, the weapons. Most Japanese snipers used the Type 97 sniper rifle, essentially a modified Type 38 infantry rifle with a telescopic sight. It fired a 6.5 mm round that had some interesting characteristics. The long barrel meant minimal muzzle flash, which made it incredibly difficult to spot where the shot came from. The lighter recoil meant these snipers could maintain their position and sight picture for follow-up shots. And here's what made it perfect for jungle warfare. At close range, that 6.5 mm round was accurate as hell. Sure, it didn't penetrate thick foliage as well as the American 30-06, but in the jungle, most engagements happened at a few hundred meters or less. At those ranges, it was deadly. The psychological impact on American troops was immense. Green Marines would often freeze or hit the deck the moment they heard a shot, which just gave the sniper more time to pick targets. Sometimes a single sniper could pin down an entire platoon for hours. As one training manual would later state, the more rounds fired by a sniper, the greater the chance the target has of locating him. And that's where our story really begins. Because the Marines quickly realized something crucial. If they could get a sniper to reveal their position by shooting at a fake target, they could turn the hunter into the hunted. But before we get to the Pacific, we need to rewind the clock about 25 years, to the muddy, blood-soaked trenches of World War I. See, the helmet decoy trick wasn't invented in World War II. Its origins lie in the brutal stalemate of the Western Front, where another kind of sniper terror was born. Picture this, it's 1915, somewhere along the Western Front. Two massive armies are dug into parallel lines of trenches stretching from the English Channel to Switzerland. Between them, a wasteland called No Man's Land, a moonscape of mud, barbed wire, craters, and corpses. Peek over the top of your trench for even a second, and you might catch a German bullet right between the eyes. The Huns had some of the best trained snipers in the world, armed with excellent optics and positioned in reinforced positions with clear fields of fire. Early in the war, British and French soldiers learned this lesson the hard way. Officers who raised their heads to observe enemy positions with binoculars would suddenly drop, dead before the sound of the shot even reached their men. The British, being both practical and a bit theatrical, came up with an ingenious solution: fake heads. These weren't crude dummies. Oh no. These were works of art. British workshops began manufacturing papier-mâché heads that looked remarkably realistic, complete with painted features, regulation helmets, and sometimes even mustaches that matched the commanding officer's style. But here's where it gets really clever. Some of these decoy heads were equipped with rubber surgical tubing that allowed them to smoke cigarettes. Can you imagine? You're a German sniper, you've been watching this section of trench for hours, and suddenly you see a British Tommy pop up for a smoke break. Too tempting to resist, right? Bang! The German takes the shot, the papier-mâché head explodes, and immediately British observers are using periscopes and triangulation to figure out exactly where that shot came from. The muzzle flash, the angle of the bullet hole through the dummy's head, the sound delay, all of it helps pinpoint the sniper's position. And then? Well, then it's time for artillery. A few 18-pounder shells screaming into that German sniper's position, and suddenly the hunter becomes the hunted. The tactic was so effective that all sides started using it. The Germans made their own dummies. So did the French. By 1917, No Man's Land was populated by a whole cast of fake soldiers, all waiting to draw fire. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that's World War I. We're talking about World War II in the Pacific. What's the connection? Well, here's the thing about military tactics: the good ones don't disappear. They evolve. Fast forward to 1942. The world is at war again, but this time, the fight isn't in muddy European trenches. It's in the steaming jungles and coral beaches of the Pacific. When the U.S. Marine Corps began training for amphibious operations against Japan, they studied every lesson from the previous war. And buried in those dusty training manuals and after-action reports was the story of the World War I decoy heads. But there was a problem. The Pacific War was different. In the trenches of France, you had relatively stable front lines. You knew roughly where the enemy was. You could set up elaborate dummy positions and watch from fixed observation posts. In the Pacific? Hell, half the time you didn't know which tree the sniper was in until someone got shot. The front lines were fluid. The jungle was so dense you could barely see 10 meters in any direction. And the Japanese snipers weren't sitting in reinforced concrete bunkers. They were tied into trees, hidden in caves, or buried under vegetation. So the Marines had to adapt. Enter Guadalcanal, the first major American offensive of the Pacific War. When the 1st Marine Division landed on August 7, 1942, they were equipped with leftover World War I gear, bolt-action rifles, and whatever knowledge about Japanese tactics they could glean from reports out of China. What they weren't prepared for was the sheer terror of the Japanese sniper. Marines would be advancing through a coconut plantation. Everything seems quiet, and then, crack, the guy next to you drops. No warning. No muzzle flash you could see. Just death from somewhere in that green hell surrounding you. And here's what made it even worse. Sometimes the Japanese would use what Marines called the playing dead trick. A Marine would see what looked like a dead Japanese soldier, go to strip him of weapons or papers, and the corpse would suddenly pull the pin on a grenade, killing them both. Trust was non-existent. Paranoia was a survival skill. Jim Young, a Marine on Guadalcanal, later recalled, "At that moment we felt that we might be considered expendable. It had occurred in the Philippines. It had occurred at Wake Island. It had occurred at Guam. These young Marines, many of them still teenagers, needed every advantage they could get. And some smart Marine remembered those old stories about World War I dummy heads. But they didn't have papier-mâché workshops or fake heads with cigarette tubes. What they did have was their helmets, their rifles, and their desperation to survive. The standard US M1 steel helmet became the centerpiece of one of the most effective counter-sniper tactics in the Pacific. The technique was brutally simple. Take your helmet, put it on the end of your rifle or a stick, and slowly raise it up from behind cover as if you were carefully peeking over to survey the enemy position. Now I know what you're thinking, this sounds too simple to work, right? The enemy would see through it immediately. But here's the thing, it did work. And it worked over and over again. Let me explain why. First, the psychology. Japanese snipers were trained to be patient, to wait for the right shot. But they were also under pressure to produce results, to disrupt American advances, to sow fear, to rack up kills. When you've been sitting in a tree for 6 hours watching Americans dig in, and suddenly you see what looks like a careless Marine peeking up, it's like dangling a steak in front of a hungry dog. The temptation is almost irresistible. Second, the setting. Remember, we're in the jungle. Visibility is poor. The sniper might be 50, 100, even 200 meters away, looking through foliage and dappled sunlight. From that distance, a helmet bobbing up from behind a log or a foxhole looks pretty damn real, especially if the Marine holding the stick times it right, slow, cautious, with just the right amount of realistic movement. Now, the Marines quickly developed a whole science around this. The basic technique went like this. Set the trap, find good cover, a fallen log, a bomb crater, a thick tree trunk. Something that would realistically protect you from sniper fire. Prep the decoy, take your helmet, put it on the end of your M1 Garand or a sturdy stick. Some Marines would even put a poncho or shirt under it to create the suggestion of shoulders. The presentation, slowly, and I mean slowly, raise the helmet into view. Don't just pop it up like a jack-in-the-box. Raise it like you're cautiously trying to peek over cover. Maybe even pause it halfway, as if you're being extra careful. That hesitation makes it look real. Wait for the shot. The sniper sees what they think is a target, lines up their shot, and fires. Mark the position. The moment that shot rings out, your buddy, positioned safely with a periscope or from a different angle, watches for the muzzle flash, notes the trajectory based on where the bullet hit the helmet, and triangulates the sniper's position. Return fire. Now you know where the bastard is. Artillery, mortars, M1 Garands on full auto, well, 8 shots as fast as you can pull the trigger. Browning machine guns, you rain hell on that position. But here's where the Marines got really clever. They developed variations. Some teams would use multiple decoys in sequence. Put one up, draw a fire, then immediately put up another 50 feet away. If the sniper takes that shot too, now you've got 2 data points to triangulate their exact position. Other Marines would coordinate with mortar teams. The moment the sniper fired, pre-sighted mortars would drop rounds on suspected positions within seconds. And then there were the elite units, the Marine Scout sniper teams. These guys took the helmet trick to a whole new level. One of the most famous was the Scout Sniper Platoon of the 6th Marine Regiment, known as the 40 Thieves, or Tucholsky's Terrors, led by First Lieutenant Frank Tucholsky. These Marines were the best of the best, expert marksmen, masters of camouflage and field craft, and innovative as hell when it came to tactics. When they used the helmet trick, it wasn't just to locate snipers. They'd use it to lure Japanese snipers into revealing themselves so their own counter-snipers could take them out in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Let me share some specific stories that show just how effective, and sometimes how darkly humorous, this tactic could be. Story 1: Patience versus Patience. On Guadalcanal, a Marine corporal we'll call Mike had been pinned down with his squad for over 3 hours by a sniper they couldn't locate. Every time anyone moved, a shot would crack through the air. The sniper was good, real good. He'd already wounded one Marine who'd been too slow getting to cover. Mike decided to try the helmet trick. He took his M1 helmet, put it on the end of a stick, and very slowly raised it up from behind a fallen palm tree. Nothing. He left it there for 30 seconds. Still nothing. This Japanese sniper was too smart to fall for a stationary target. So Mike tried something different. He had a buddy tap the stick at irregular intervals, making the helmet bob and weave slightly, as if someone was nervously peeking up, then ducking, then peeking again. Crack! The sniper finally took the bait. The bullet went right through the helmet. But here's the beautiful part: the sniper had been waiting so long, and was so focused on getting that shot, that when he finally fired, he didn't immediately relocate. That moment of satisfaction, of thinking he made the kill, cost him. Mike's buddy, positioned 20 yards away with his own M1, saw the muzzle flash high in a banyan tree. 5 seconds later, that sniper learned what 8 rounds of 30-06 could do to a man tied in a tree. Story 2: The Multiple Decoy Gambit. During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the 40 Thieves faced a particularly deadly sniper who had already killed 4 Marines over 2 days. This guy was a ghost. He'd fire and immediately relocate before anyone could return fire. Lieutenant Tuchovsky came up with a plan. His team set up 4 different decoy positions spread across a 100-yard front. Each position had a helmet on a stick, and they'd raise them in random sequence. First helmet up, no shot. Second helmet up, still nothing. Third helmet, bang. The sniper took the bait on the third decoy. But Tuchovsky's team didn't return fire. Not yet. They waited. Fourth helmet goes up in a different position, bang. The sniper hits it too, thinking he's racking up kills. Now they had 2 firing positions from the same shooter. Triangulation gave them an exact location, a small cave in a coral ridge. 1 bazooka round later, problem solved. Story 3: The Smoking Decoy. This is one of my favorites because it shows just how creative Marines could get. A sergeant on Peleliu, one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific, decided to make his helmet decoy more realistic. He remembered reading about the World War I dummies that could smoke. So he took a cigarette, lit it, and stuck it in the webbing of the helmet. Then he'd raise the helmet up, and sure enough, there was a thin trail of smoke coming from it. The first time he tried it, a Japanese sniper shot at it within 15 seconds. 15 seconds! The smoke made it too tempting. It looked like a careless American taking a smoke break during combat. The sergeant's spotter nailed the sniper's position immediately, and a machine gun team opened up, cutting down the sniper along with the tree he was hiding in. Word spread about the smoking decoy technique, and pretty soon Marines all over Peleliu were trying it. It got so effective that some Japanese snipers stopped shooting at helmets entirely, correctly assuming they were decoys. But here's the twist: that made the Japanese snipers less effective overall, because now they had to wait longer for confirmed targets, which meant more time for Marines to advance or locate them through other means. Now, I don't want to oversell this. The helmet trick wasn't some magical solution that ended the sniper threat. Japanese snipers remained deadly throughout the war. But every tool that gave Marines even a slight edge, every tactic that saved even a few lives, mattered immensely. Like any military tactic, the helmet decoy evolved as both sides adapted. Japanese snipers, being intelligent and well-trained soldiers, started catching on. After the first few months of fighting, many Japanese snipers became suspicious of lone helmets appearing above cover. Some would refuse to shoot at helmets entirely, waiting instead for a clear view of a human target. Others would fire at the helmet but immediately relocate, knowing that return fire would be incoming within seconds. So the Marines evolved too. They started using the decoys in combination with other tactics. Decoy plus flanking. One team would use the helmet trick to draw the sniper's attention and fire, while another team would flank around to the sniper's position. The helmet was just a distraction. Decoy plus mortars. Pre-plotted mortar fire would drop rounds on likely sniper positions the instant a shot was heard, before the sniper could relocate. Decoy plus snipers. Marine Scout snipers would use the helmet to provoke return fire, then engage in counter-sniper duels. It became a deadly chess match: decoy, shoot, relocate, repeat. False decoys. Sometimes Marines would set up obvious decoys that they wanted the Japanese to recognize as fake, making them overconfident. Then, later, they'd use a more realistic-looking decoy that the Japanese sniper would dismiss as another fake, until it was too late, and they'd already given away their position. By 1943, the helmet decoy technique was being taught in formal Marine training programs. The Scout and Sniper School established at Guadalcanal in September 1942 included it as standard curriculum for Scout sniper teams. Training manuals specifically covered how to make the decoy look realistic, optimal timing and movement patterns, coordination with observation teams, what to do immediately after drawing fire, safety procedures, because yes, sometimes that bullet would go right through your cover if you weren't careful. But here's something fascinating: the helmet trick wasn't just an American tactic. The Finns used a variation during the Winter War against Soviet snipers, calling it Kill Macaulay or Cold Charlie. They'd use shop mannequins dressed as officers to draw fire, then hit Soviet positions with anti-tank rifles. The Soviets used helmet decoys against German snipers on the Eastern Front. There's a famous account from Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev, who described using a helmet trick during the Battle of Stalingrad. His partner Kulikov would slowly raise his helmet, a German sniper would fire, and in that split second when the German raised his head to confirm the kill, Zaitsev would take the shot. It's the same principle, adapted to different circumstances, proving that good tactics are universal. So what's the legacy of this stupid helmet trick? Well, variations of it are still taught in military training today. Modern armies use inflatable decoys, thermal dummy positions, and electronic decoys to draw fire and reveal enemy positions. The principle remains the same: make the enemy commit to a shot, then use that information against them. It's impossible to quantify exactly how many lives the helmet decoy saved, but we can make some educated guesses. If even a quarter of the Marine Scout sniper teams used it effectively just once per battle, and if each successful use prevented even 2 to 3 casualties by eliminating a sniper early, we're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of American lives saved across the Pacific campaign. But beyond the numbers, what I find most remarkable about this tactic is what it represents. These were young men, most barely out of high school, dropped into a literal green hell, facing an enemy that was patient, skilled, and committed to fighting to the death. They didn't have satellite imagery, thermal optics, or drone surveillance. What they had was their wits, their helmets, and their determination to see home again. The helmet decoy wasn't developed in some think tank or by military strategists in Washington, D.C. It was refined in the field, by desperate Marines sharing knowledge, teaching each other tricks, doing whatever it took to survive and help their brothers survive. That's the real story here. Not that a helmet on a stick was some superweapon, but that ordinary American kids, when faced with extraordinary danger, used their intelligence and creativity to fight back. Many of these Marines went on to live long lives. They came home, started families, built businesses, became the backbone of post-war America. Some of them probably never told their kids or grandkids about the helmet trick. It was just one of 1,000 small tactics they used to survive. But every time they used that simple decoy, every time it worked and they made it through another day, it was a small victory. A tiny rebellion against the chaos and death surrounding them. A clever middle finger to an enemy sniper who thought they had all the advantages. So there you have it, the story of how a helmet on a stick became one of the unsung heroes of the Pacific War. It wasn't a farmer's invention, but it was agricultural in its simplicity, basic, practical, effective. The kind of solution that works because it's so simple there's nothing to break, nothing to go wrong. And maybe that's the bigger lesson here. In war, as in life, sometimes the most brilliant solutions are the ones that seem almost stupid in their simplicity. Sometimes survival isn't about having the best technology or the most firepower. It's about using your head, adapting to your circumstances, and refusing to let your enemy dictate the terms of engagement. Those Marines who used helmet decoys weren't military geniuses or tactical masterminds. They were just people trying to survive. But in doing so, they created a tactical legacy that lasted decades and saved countless lives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into an overlooked piece of World War II history, please hit that like button. It helps the channel tremendously. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to keep bringing you these kinds of detailed, story-driven history videos. Drop a comment below and let me know, did your grandfather or great-grandfather serve in the Pacific? Did he ever tell you about the tactics they used against Japanese snipers? I'd love to hear your family stories. And if you want to support the channel and get early access to videos like this, check out the Patreon link in the description. Until next time, remember the ingenuity of those who came before us, honor their memory by learning their stories, and never underestimate the power of a simple idea executed brilliantly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.